Antarctica, the last great wilderness on Earth. A frozen desert of ice and stone, so hostile that it has never been home to a permanent human population. It is a place we think of as untouched, a continent where only scientists, explorers, and adventurers have ever set foot, and only in the past 2 centuries. But what if that isn't true? What if someone was here before the maps, before the expeditions, before Antarctica was even officially discovered? What if bones, human bones, were found buried in its frozen sands, dating back to a time when no one would have been here at all? Who was this person? How did they get here? And what secret do their remains carry that continues to haunt historians and scientists alike? This is the mystery of the oldest human remains ever found in Antarctica, a discovery that should not exist, but does. The Forbidden Continent. For millions of years, Antarctica has been locked in silence. The mighty Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the strongest ocean current on Earth, isolated it from the rest of the world, trapping it in ice and cutting it off from migration or settlement. During the time of the dinosaurs, Antarctica was warm, green, and lush. Fossilized forests still lie beneath its ice, with petrified tree trunks and leaves preserved like ghosts of a forgotten world. Amphibians, marsupial relatives, and strange ancient reptiles once roamed there. But by the time humans spread across the Earth, Antarctica was something else entirely, a fortress of ice. Temperatures plunged to levels that no ancient community could survive. With its endless blizzards, months of darkness, and deadly seas, Antarctica seemed immune to human presence. And yet, whispers persisted. For centuries, sailors spoke of a vast southern land, Terra Australis Incognito, the unknown southern land. It appeared on maps centuries before anyone ever laid eyes on the continent. Some dismissed it as a myth, a balancing landmass imagined to counter the weight of the known continents of the North. But others believed. Legends of the South. In Polynesian oral tradition, there is a tale of Hui Tianora, a navigator who journeyed far into the southern seas around the 7th century AD. His story tells of voyages into a place of thick fog, endless dark skies, and waters not touched by the sun. He described rocks rising from the ocean and cliffs as white as bone. Some modern scholars believe he may have been describing icebergs, glaciers, or even the edge of Antarctica itself. Could Polynesians, the greatest seafarers of the ancient world, have reached the fringe of Antarctica long before Europeans even dreamed of its existence? They crossed thousands of miles of open ocean, guided only by stars, waves, and instinct. If anyone had the skill to touch the outer limits of the frozen South, it was them. But without physical proof, Hui Tianora's tale remains only a legend. And officially, Antarctica's story began much later. In 1820, the Russian explorer Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen recorded the first confirmed sighting of its ice cliffs. Soon after, American and British expeditions followed. According to the history books, this was the beginning of human contact with Antarctica. But the bones tell a different story. The discovery that shouldn't exist. It was January 7th, 1985. A Chilean scientist, Daniel Torres Navarro, was surveying a stretch of rocky shoreline on Livingston Island, part of the Antarctic Peninsula. The location was Yámana Beach, a remote, windswept place few had ever set foot on. At exactly 1635, while collecting marine debris, he noticed something half buried in the sand. At first, it looked like an ordinary stone, but when he brushed away the grains, his heart froze. It was a bone. Not animal bone, human. The rear and top of a human skull peeked through the ground, algae-stained but astonishingly well preserved. Over the following hours and days, more fragments were retrieved. Parts of a jawbone with teeth still intact, though some were missing. A skull that once belonged to a young woman. This wasn't debris from a modern researcher. These weren't the bones of an unfortunate explorer lost in the 20th century. When analyzed, the remains were dated to between 1819 and 1825. That's years before Antarctica was officially discovered. The woman of Antarctica. Who was she? The skull suggested she was young, perhaps in her 20s. Her features pointed to South American ancestry, possibly from Chile. Some researchers described her as a mestiza, a woman of mixed indigenous and European descent. But what was she doing here, on a continent no one had supposedly reached yet? There were no settlements, no records, no ship's logs mention a woman lost to the Antarctic storms. Her presence made no sense, and the mystery deepened when more bones began to surface. Bones in the sand. 8 years later, in January 1993, Torres returned to Yámana Beach. While observing seals near the original discovery site, he spotted another bone lying exposed on the ground. It was a human femur. The size and dimensions matched the earlier remains. Over time, erosion and wind had slowly revealed more fragments of the same skeleton. But no full body was ever recovered. Excavations by the University of Chile in the late 1980s turned up nothing else. The Antarctic environment had scattered or buried the bones beyond reach. The fragments were preserved in Chile, where scientists hoped to perform DNA analysis to confirm the woman's ancestry and link all the bones to the same individual. But the sea had already claimed its price. Years of saltwater exposure had degraded the DNA almost beyond recognition. Decades later, no conclusive genetic test has ever been released. And so she remains a riddle. Theories of a lost life. Without artifacts, journals, or ship records, scientists have only theories. One possibility is that she was part of an early 19th century sealing expedition. In those days, sealers pushed further and further south, driven by European demand for fur and oil. Ships often carried crews from South America, and sometimes women came along as workers, companions, or stowaways. Perhaps she fell ill and was abandoned. Perhaps she died on the voyage and her body was cast into the sea, drifting ashore with the currents. Another theory suggests she was indigenous, possibly Yagan or Mapuche, and traveled with sealers. Some indigenous communities were indeed recruited, willingly or not, into sealing expeditions. But no matter the theory, one question remains. Why here? Why her? Was she Antarctica's first forgotten visitor? The silence of the records. If sealing ships had reached the Antarctic Peninsula before 1820, why don't we have records? Why is there no mention of this woman in any logbook? The truth is, many expeditions of that era went unrecorded. Some ships disappeared. Others had reasons to keep their journeys secret. Illegal sealing, unlicensed hunting, or ventures into disputed waters. It's possible that one such ship carried her south, only to leave her behind in death, her story swallowed by the waves. And so, her bones remain the only testimony of a voyage we never wrote down. The haunting questions. The discovery challenges everything we thought we knew about Antarctica's human story. Could there have been undocumented voyages to the continent before its official discovery? Were indigenous groups reaching their waters long before Europeans recorded them? How many other unmarked graves might lie hidden under the ice, waiting for the thaw? Most hauntingly, who was this woman? What was her name? Was she a seafarer, a stowaway, a companion, or a victim? We may never know. Secrets beneath the ice. Antarctica is melting. With every passing year, permafrost softens, glaciers retreat, and the land gives up secrets it has held for centuries. Ancient forests have emerged, prehistoric animals have been revealed, and perhaps, one day, more human remains will appear. Bones of others who may have come before the explorers, whose names were never written in history books. The Antarctic woman's lonely skull is not just a scientific anomaly, it is a reminder. History is never complete. It is stitched together by fragments. A bone here, a shipwreck there, a legend passed down through generations. And sometimes it takes just one discovery to shatter the story we thought was true. The Forgotten Visitor. The woman of Yámana Beach remains an enigma. Her bones, scattered by waves and sand, tell us that someone reached Antarctica before it was discovered. Someone whose presence was not recorded, whose story was never told, whose memory has been erased by time. And yet she was there, the oldest human remains ever found in Antarctica. Proof that the frozen continent's story is deeper, stranger, and more human than we ever imagined. Perhaps one day we will learn her name. Perhaps one day the ice will surrender more of its dead. Until then, she remains what she has always been. A question. A question buried in ice. A question that refuses to be forgotten. If this mystery left you questioning what else history might be hiding, don't let it end here. Share your theory about who the Antarctic woman might have been: a forgotten seafarer, an indigenous explorer, or someone lost to a voyage never written down. Join the conversation, challenge the story we've been told, and keep digging into the secrets buried beneath the ice. Because sometimes the past only survives if we refuse to let it stay silent. Stay blessed and stay curious.